If you like these videos, please check out my full course at www.lsat.totaltestprep.net with tons of clearly explained actual LSAT questions written by someone who's mastered test and helped others master it, and an evaluation period where you only pay if you want to continue.
Alright, so in this video we're going to cover the dual questions. What are the dual questions? So same thing. What do the dual questions ask for? How are they phrased? What do they test? How do we approach them? Now, in terms of the basic information, these questions will deal with either one or both passages. Dual questions are the questions that are in the dual passages, and the individual questions themselves that are in the dual passages may deal with either one or both passages. A minority of the questions in the dual passages will be just like the questions in the single passages. So you'll be asked to answer a question that involves only one of the two passages and involves inference, direct information, method reasoning, etc. So that's minority of the questions. Most of the questions are going to deal with both passages. And a common variation is where the passages are evaluated as separate and distinct, and you're in some way comparing and contrasting them. Another common variation is where the passages are evaluated as parts of a coherent whole, and you're in some way analyzing their relationships, or both of them together. So that's the deal with the dual questions. You're going to basically have a situation where you're either dealing with a normal question that we've gone up to this point, which deals just one of the passages, or it's going to be a question that deals with both passages, either with them as separate and distinct with respect to some comparison and coherence, or comparison and contrasting, or where they are looked at as, where the two passages are looked at as a whole, and the question asks about some sort of relationship between them. So, with respect to these question types, with respect to the questions dealing with one passage, these questions are analogous to questions for the other kinds of passages in the reading comprehension section, and they will always identify which passage you need to look at, and they will generally deal with the main point, inference, or direct information, as well as other types. A way in which you'll find that they'll be asked is, for example, which one of the following most accurately expresses the main point of passage A? That's an example of a question dealing with just one passage. Obviously, just focus on the passage is a main point question. Or, which one of the following claims about the Roma is not made in passage A? So, this is actually something that is different from what we've seen, but it's essentially along the lines of a direct information except question. So that's the situation with the questions dealing with one passage. Now, with respect to the basic approach, questions dealing with both passages where the passages are separate and discrete is one particular approach. So for these questions, you'll read through them and consider their similarities and differences without thinking about how to integrate their content into some sort of whole. Variation of this subtype is where you ask to identify some sort of coherence or agreement. So these questions will be types that we've already gone over. Both passages explicitly mention which one of the following, etc. That would be an example, and this is a direct information question, and you're looking for information that is explicitly stated in both passages. Or each of the passages contains information sufficient to answer which one of the following questions. This is also a direct information question. So where you have the passages considered as separate and discrete, once again, it's going to be similar to what we've already seen with respect to the other questions we've gone over in the other videos. You'll just be asked essentially to find something that is in two different places or that deals with two different places, but they're separate. Now, another variation of the subtype is where you're asked to identify some sort of coherence or agreement. So it can be inferred that both authors would be most likely to agree with which one of the following statements. This is an inference question. The term problematic has which one of the following meanings in both passage A and passage B, lines 1935. This is a definition question, and the term in question has the same meaning in both passages. Or, for example, which one of the following is a principle that can be most reasonably considered to underlie the reasoning both of the passages. So this is a principle question where you ask to determine the principle that justifies the move from premises to the conclusion. In this case, both of the passages are extended arguments and are both justified by a principle from the answer choices. Okay. Another variation is where you're asked to identify some sort of conflict or disagreement. So these questions are also going to be types that we've gone over. So for example, it can be inferred that the authors would be most likely to disagree with which one of the following. So this is like a pointed issue question from the argument section. Or for example, which one of the following, if true, would cast doubt on the argument in passage B, but bolster the argument in passage A? So this is like a combination strengthen and weaken question. The answer choice will strengthen the argument in one of the passages and weaken it in the other. Or for example, in which one of the following ways are the passages not parallel? So this is essentially a method of reasoning question where you're asked to determine how the structure of the two passages are different. Or which one of the following is discussed in passage B but not in passage A? So this is also a variant on the direct information question. The third subtype of this question type is where you're asked to identify irrelevance. You're looking for the choice that isn't supported by either passage. So these question types appear rarely, and they're basically direct information variants. So for example, each of the following is supported by one or both of the passages except. So this is an inference question, and the wrong answer choices are going to be inferences from one of the passages or from the both of them together. The correct choice will either be in opposition to information choices or irrelevant and not mentioned. So now we're coming to a situation where we've got questions dealing with both passages, where the passages are part of an integrated whole. For these questions, you'll need to pay attention to how the two passages are related to one another and what the encompassing themes are that incorporate the information from both passages. So these are different from the variations we had covered, that we had reviewed up to this point, because in all the previous questions, you're attacking the two passages, you're approaching the two passages as if they were separate, as if they were just two separate passages. For these questions, you have to think about the overlap and the relationships between the passages, because that's what you're going to be asked about. So these questions, as I said, will generally ask you about the relationship between the two passages or about a specific aspect of the relationship. So for example, which of the following is true about the relationship between two passages? Or the relationship between which one of the following pairs of documents is most analogous to the relationship between passage A and passage B? So this is like the principal analogy questions from the argument section. If the author of passage A were to read passage B, he or she would be most likely to agree with which one of the following? So this is like an inference question, but it asks you to extend the perspective of a character from one of the passages into the other. Likewise, which one of the following most accurately describes the attitude expressed by the author of passage B toward the overall argument represented by passage A? And so this is similar to the author's attitude questions. Like you see, it asks about the author's attitude. Which one of the following can be most reasonably inferred from the two passages taken together, but not from either one individually? So this is also an inference question that asks you to consider the two passages as a whole. Okay, so you see the basic difference. The questions that you're going to be doing are going to be similar, maybe with certain variations for the certain variations of the basic questions that you've seen in the single passages, but with respect to the questions in the dual passages, you're either going to have questions that deal with just one passage. These tend to be fairly rare, the minority of questions, or you'll have questions that deal with both passages. And when they deal with both passages, you're either approaching the answer choices, you're either approaching the passages as separate. You don't have to worry about how they connect and what one author would think about the other author's argument, etc. And in the other basic variation, the question asks you to approach the passages as if they were interrelated and connected. Okay, so quick summary. You'll need to pay attention to the ways in which the information in the two passages is similar or different across passages, as well as how the passages as wholes are related to one another. Since the questions are basically the same questions as the one we've covered for the regular passages, the approaches will in essence be the same.